I can't quite believe it. I cannot believe that the Kings just went into Boston and beat the Celtics. This is a Celtics team that was running out their entire lineup. They had their full starting lineup. They had Al Horford off the bench and Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hadger. Like they had all of their guys. The Kings come in without Fox, and the Kings were coming in on a 5-game win streak to Boston, where they haven't won in quite some time. The Kings had lost 6 in a row to the Celtics, which, when it's an East versus West team, that feels like forever because you don't play each other very often. And so I'm thinking, with the Kings being on this 5-game win streak, you start a road trip. We'll lose to the Celtics, and then we'll go from there to Chicago and Milwaukee and see what we can do. But no, here we are. Doug Christie, 6-1 since he's taken over. This is pretty crazy. And coming into the Celtics game, my key to the game was pray. And I think it worked. I think our prayers worked. The Celtics shoot 26.8% from three. And, some of it is the Kings defense, but definitely some of it is just them missing. But the Kings played hard defensively. They played really well offensively, and they didn't shoot some incredible number from three. They started out really hot, but they ended at 38.3% from three, but they got up 47 threes. That's just not something you usually see with this Kings team. And Doug Christie has been emphasizing that he wants this team to take more 3-point shots. And maybe not quite 47, but coming into a game where you're without De'Aaron Fox, that takes away a big element of the Kings being able to get to the paint and even get spray threes and get to the mid-range and, all the things that De'Aaron Fox provides. And we saw how that could be a little rough against the Heat, even though we won that game. But the Kings came out in that first quarter and they were just firing from three. And, defensively, they were getting picked apart because they started Keon Ellis on Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown is just far too strong for Keon. And normally, that isn't a problem for Keon. Normally, he finds ways around it. He's able to knock the ball away and, find ways to force turnovers and get his hand on the ball and bother them. But Jaylen Brown was so good early on, going at Keon Ellis. And this is the type of matchup that obviously exposes the Kings' lack of wing depth. Because even if you get a player who you weren't going to start over Keon Ellis to match up like that, still, even coming off the bench, when the bench came in, that it's Kevin Huerter guarding Jason Tatum, I think is the matchup they went with, and Trey Lyles guarding Jaylen Brown, and now you move Keon onto Peyton Pritchard. Like, this is not good. So that obviously exposes the Kings' flaws in terms of having defensive wings. And it's why my biggest gripe with firing Mike Brown was always that he wasn't given the defensive wings, or that now it feels like the Kings might see this and say, hey, we're on a little win streak here because we, have Doug Christie and the guys are playing hard. We're on a little win streak. Now we don't need to make a trade. Like, we still need to make a trade. And I think just those matchups proved it. But then obviously we still win the game. So I'm like, guys, maybe, we still want the front office to make a trade. You're playing too well, making them think that we shouldn't make a trade. But then you can obviously look at it from the other side and say, hey, well, this team, 19-19 now, back to 500, right in the mix in the Western Conference. That's going to make the team more likely to, actually want to go in and be like, this core is working now. So let's make a move and really try to propel ourselves up the standings. But right now, it's just working so well. And so despite not having the size to be able to match up with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, with Keegan, of course, taking the Tatum assignment, the Kings just got up a ton of threes. And I mean, even though, they started off hitting a bunch and it was great. You had in the first quarter 2 from Monk, 2 from Keegan, 2 from Domas, and a Keon 3. And I just loved that philosophy from Doug Christie because, yeah, they cooled off. They cooled off quite a bit. And quite a ways into the game, they were shooting, near 30% from three. But it's still, they were just getting up so many threes and able to keep up with the Celtics 3-point shooting. And I think that was the only way that you were ever going to come into Boston and beat this Celtics team. So I thought that game plan right away was really good. At one point, it looked like the Kings switched DeMar onto Jaylen Brown when things were going really poorly, But then the Celtics would just get the switches or they were attacking in transition. Somehow Keon always ended up back on Jaylen Brown. And so the Kings actually did go zone for a little bit. And on the first possession, Porzingis gets it in the middle and just hits a midi. Like, that's the kind of cheat code that Kristaps Porzingis is, and that what he provides to this team. Then the next possession, the Kings played it pretty well, and they forced a Derek White baseline mid-range shot that he missed. And that's the type of shot that you kind of want to force, because yes, he was open, but you want to force the Celtics off of the three-point line. And if they're also not getting to the rim with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and if it's not like a Kristaps Porzingis mid-ranger with a mismatch, that's a win. So yes, Derek White could very easily hit that shot, but it's still the idea of the zone kind of worked on that possession. And then you had the bench come in, and you had Herter on Tatum, Lyles on Jaylen Brown. And so just the size of Trey Lyles worked pretty well on Jaylen Brown. And some of it comes down to the Celtics just settling more. And so Herter came in and he did a solid job on Tatum for the first few minutes, just staying in front of him when Tatum tried to go into the post, forcing longer range shots. And when he would get blown by Tatum, which definitely happened, the help was very solid. And so initially it worked, and with that bench unit in there. But then, a little later on, there were some miscommunications. There was a miscommunication on whether they were switching, and the switch was slightly late and just gave Jason Tatum enough space for a three. And then on another possession, it's in transition. No one is picking up Jason Tatum with the ball coming down the middle of the court. I think we saw a lot of miscommunications when any bench unit was in the game. The starters did a very good job, I think, communicating defensively. One thing the Kings did very well in this game was rebound the basketball. And of course, you have Sabonis with 28 rebounds, 8 of them offensive. But we also got 8 more offensive rebounds outside of Sabonis. 5 from Trey Lyles. Absolutely massive. Trey Lyles ended this game with 11 rebounds. And that was super important because it's 5 offensive, 6 defensive. And that was a little bit of a problem in that first quarter when the Kings were doing a lot of switching. Or even when they weren't switching, when Sabonis would have to go out and contest Al Horford. I don't know why I said it like that. Al Horford or Kristaps Porzingis, and it's pulling Sabonis away from the basket. And so you need other guys to rebound. It was a little bit of a problem in that first quarter, but they definitely got better. And they only allowed 8 offensive rebounds, and that's with the Celtics shooting 41 threes and missing 30 of them. So that's a lot of long rebounds that the Kings were able to grab. And then the Kings just started having fun. At the end of that first quarter, Trey Lyles, I think he got the steal, and he pushes it in transition and throws a behind the back pass to DeMar DeRozan. I was just like, what's happening? What just happened? Trey Lyles pushing the break and then throwing a behind the back pass? And I felt like the broadcast didn't get hyped for it. And of course, it's not a home game, so the crowd didn't care. And I was like, we need more attention. That Trey Lyles just threw a behind the back pass to DeRozan in transition. Like, that was crazy. And Devin Carter came in, missed his first 3, but then DeRozan drew Luke Cornett with a nice pump fake and then hit Carter on the wing, and Carter knocked down the 3. And then on defense, like, the Kings played good defense in this game, but there were a few things that I thought that they could have done better and kind of got bailed out on a few times. Like, they went zone at the end of the first, left Tatum open in the corner, and he missed. There were a few times where they're blitzing Tatum, or sometimes it was just in the zone. The ball gets to Luke Cornett in the middle, and they would then send a man to go and guard Luke Cornett. And I was thinking, like, the whole point of letting Luke Cornett have the ball in the middle is make him make a play, right? But instead you help off Pritchard on the wing because you sent Devin Carter to hit Tatum on the other wing, and you leave Peyton Pritchard to go guard Luke Cornett in the middle, and then they hit Pritchard for 3. So I didn't like that. And then they did it another time where Luke Cornett gets it, and Monk, down low on the block, commits to Cornett and leaves his man open for a layup. So in those moments, I was just like, make Cornett beat you. If he puts it on the ground and, finishes at the rim, then, maybe you have to adjust later. But I just think, like, make Cornett beat you first before you commit to him like that. But overall, a great first quarter, 34-27. But at that point, it was just like the Kings were hot to start. And, I wasn't believing yet. For sure, I wasn't believing. And then the start of the second quarter happens. And the Kings completely gave away all momentum. And it was with the unit, I believe, of Devin Carter, Kevin Huerter, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, and Trey Lyles. That unit just looked super clunky. It was miscommunications defensively. It was miscommunications offensively, throwing the ball away. It's just like everything about it was clunky. There's a moment where Porzingis pops out to the perimeter. Lyles stays deep. So Kevin Huerter's supposed to help on Kristaps Porzingis from the other wing. And he's just late in doing that. And that will come back later on in this game. And Kevin Huerter just was brutal. Absolutely brutal in his 19 minutes. Because, he was late on that rotation, allowed an offensive rebound to Peyton Pritchard, and got muscled inside by Pritchard on a different play, not even the offensive rebound play, and then was 0 for 5 from 3. And I have no problem with any of the 3-point shots he took, because he needs to take those shots. Like, that's his game. If he's not taking those shots, there's no point for him to be out there. But at the same time, if he's missing those shots, there's also no point for him to be out there. He had 3 steals, and so that was like the only good thing that he did. But even on one of the steals, he stole it and then immediately threw it away. Another good thing he did was drive by Al Horford, and the Kings had a very spaced out lineup, and so there's no one there to contest at the rim. Celtics sticking to their man and saying, try to finish inside, try to beat Al Horford, and he did. But with Huerter, it's very much like he makes one good play for every 3 bad plays. Or he makes one good play like the steal and then immediately messes it up with a turnover. So he was brutal. Devin Carter also was a big part of the miscommunications defensively. And, that's something that you can obviously live with a rookie who's playing in his 4th, 5th game, something like that. Those are the kind of hiccups you expect from a rookie. So it's very much like that meme, the Gordon Ramsay meme, where it's like, Kevin Huerter, you donkey or whatever, and then, my precious to Devin Carter. It's very much that. But then, of course, it's proven why we're like that later in the game when Devin Carter plays very well. But I thought, like, here we go, when the Celtics started the second quarter on a big run. But the Kings were able to respond. Trey Lyles was huge, like I said, on the glass, just making all the hustle plays, getting offensive rebounds. He hit a 3. Keegan Murray was doing a very good job at guarding Jaylen Brown. So after the hot start, just exploiting a smaller guy, Keegan slowed him down. And they kind of kept it within 4 before we called a timeout and put all of our starters back in. And once we put those starters back in, you had Monk getting a floater, DeMar stripping Porzingis, and Keon taking it to the rim for an and one, where he just came to a stop, pump faked, drew the foul, and put it in. Kings up 1. So I completely thought that run was going to snowball, and the Kings answered right back, and right away somehow are back in the lead. The end of the second quarter, the Celtics game plan, they were like switching everything. And so they were just letting DeMar DeRozan go at whatever mismatch. And DeMar was getting great shots. He was getting open shots in the mid-range, and shots you expect him to hit, and he just wasn't hitting him. And it was so hard to watch because it's like, this is what the Celtics are giving us. They're giving us these DeMar middies, which that should not be able to be the game plan if DeMar was just hitting anything. But then what was brutal about that is that meant the Celtics could stay home on everyone else, just back up off DeRozan. And so it really hurt the Kings offense. And so to counter that, the Kings were just trying to play fast. And it wasn't because of that they were trying to play fast. They were trying to play fast anyways, but that's just what happened to kind of be the counter. Sabonis, every time he grabbed a rebound, which was 20 times on the defensive end this game, maybe not in the fourth quarter, but every other time, he was just chucking the ball down the court to whoever. And somehow, I don't think he turned it over once doing that. Guys were ready, running out towards the wings, and he was just chucking it down to the furthest guy down the court to get the Kings up and running. And then to counter some of the misses, because the Kings as a whole went cold, but then obviously also DeMar DeRozan it was Sabonis on the glass, it was Trey Lyles on the glass, keeping us alive in those situations. And DeMar finally got an and one to end the quarter after just some horrendous shooting. But the shots that he was taking, he took 26 shots and went 9 for 26. You just have to live with that when Fox is out. If Fox is in this game, then you can say, DeRozan, you can go sit down, and we can run a different lineup. We can have Trey Lyles and Keon Ellis both in there. We can have some more Devin Carter. But with Fox out, you need DeMar. And I feel like I didn't mention him at all. But Malik Monk had a great game overall. And obviously I'll get to him more in the second half, but he was great in the first half as well. And he was a big part of pushing in transition, wasn't afraid to fire away from deep. But then it was the defensive end. And that's what we really saw in the third quarter. Malik Monk, since the firing of Mike Brown, has been a completely different player defensively. Same player offensively, completely different player defensively. Watching him and DeRozan on the court defensively, just in that losing streak, it was killing me inside. But this is a completely different guy, and that's why the starting lineup really worked. Because yeah, Keon Ellis, good defensively, but he got scorched in this game, obviously because of the matchup, in the first half specifically. You know, you need more than just having Keon and Keegan out there. That's a big help, obviously, but Malik Monk, the super underrated defender right now. And that's what the Kings did in the third quarter. They forced 8 turnovers. Because those middle 2 quarters, Kings scored 19 points and 23 points. But it was about holding the Celtics to 21 points in that third quarter, and also being able to score off of those turnovers that you create, because the offense didn't look good. The Kings were struggling because the Celtics were switching everything, and the Kings couldn't get the ball deep into Sabonis. They couldn't get the ball deep into DeMar. They just weren't able to make the interior passes necessary. Finally, DeMar made a very nice pass into Sabonis to get Sabonis to the rim. And shout out DeMar for the 9 assist, 0 turnover game. DeMar made some very nice passes, and guys were obviously able to knock down some shots. But the Celtics were still giving DeMar all that space and that, sucked away spacing when he's not able to make his mid-ranger. It's not as big of a deal if he's not able to make the 3, but if he's not able to even make the mid-ranger, that's when the spacing gets very questionable, although Sabonis was hitting his 3s. Keegan was making his 3s. DeMar did draw a foul, and that's kind of what I wanted to see, was him be able to attack when they're dropped so deep. He's not what he used to be attacking the basket, but he still has shown this season that he can attack the basket at times. He did it really well late in the game against Miami, and he did it a few times here, getting the and one at the end of the first half, but then also started the third quarter doing that. And then defensively, Monk forcing a turnover on Jaylen Brown when Brown tried to go at Keon Ellis in the post. So that was a good adjustment where they sent Monk at him, and he was able to force the turnover. Monk also got another steal guarding Tatum one-on-one. Keon got a steal on Tatum one-on-one, so they were just turning over Tatum and Brown on the perimeter, or Tatum especially on the perimeter. And Herter got a few steals. Monk locked up Peyton Pritchard on one play and drew the offensive foul. So that's another one. So that's 3 forced turnovers from Monk in that third quarter alone. And they were capitalizing on the other end. Monk just pushing the ball up the court super quickly, going straight into a pick and roll with Sabonis, and he finds Sabonis on the roll. Keegan taking it quickly to the basket. Everyone running the floor, and that's what the Kings needed to be able to do. And it just felt like everyone outside of Kevin Herter was playing very, very well. Late in that quarter, Sabonis started to kind of dominate the offensive paint, but he just kept getting pushed in the back. Guys constantly had their hands on his back as he went up for layups. I don't understand how they weren't fouls. And it's just frustrating because that's what he gets called on the other end every single time. When they just, even lightly put their hand on someone's back, Sabonis gets called for that every time. And he never gets that call. And it was really annoying. Oh yeah, another one I forgot. Devin Carter forcing a turnover by forcing an illegal screen. So it was a variety of ways that the Kings were forcing turnovers. And then DeMar finally hit a midi. That was a welcome sign. And it's games like this where it's like DeMar is going to struggle for 3 quarters, and the team was able to just keep it close so that DeMar can take over in the fourth quarter. And that's exactly what happened. It wasn't the greatest fourth quarter takeover we've ever seen, where he's knocking down every mid-range shot, but he did enough. He did enough alongside everyone hitting their shots and the lockdown defense. And the start of the fourth quarter was just amazing because the Celtics were just being disrespectful, putting Kristaps Porzingis guarding Devin Carter and just backing up off him. Like, are you kidding me? What kind of defense is that? And Carter just says, okay, I'm just going to shoot it. Makes the first, comes down again, makes the second, and forces them to put Pritchard on him. And when they have Pritchard on him, he just drives to the basket and hits the layup. So it was just so good from Devin Carter to start the fourth quarter. Exactly the type of tone setting that we needed, because I think it was tied going into that fourth quarter. And the Celtics got some baskets at the start, but it just didn't matter because Devin Carter was too hot. And really because the Celtics' defensive game plan was just awful. And of course, if Carter takes those threes and misses those threes, then they're looking like geniuses. But that's not what happens, and you're giving Carter, who, has not proved it in the NBA yet, but he also proved that he's not who he was in college, so these are the exact types of shots that Devin Carter loves to take. The Kings were getting bullied inside a little bit without Sabonis. They picked up 3 early fouls, and really 4, but 3 early fouls without Sabonis. They put Sabonis back in, and then they picked up a 4th. But because of the Devin Carter masterclass that was going on, it didn't matter too much. I was afraid it might matter later on because the Celtics were in the penalty and they did get to the line quite a bit, but that was pretty much their only offense. The Kings were killing the Celtics on the offensive glass again, and then Sabonis hits the big 3 to go 3 for 4 from 3. He took 3 in the first quarter, I think, and went 2 for 3, and then didn't take another one until the 4th when he hits it. And then there was an amazing moment. I can't remember exactly how it came about, but the Celtics sending numbers, maybe at DeMar, I can't remember. But the ball gets kicked to Keegan. And it's one of those situations where there's Keegan on the wing, there's another Kings shooter in the corner, and one defender in between them. This is the exact type of situation that Kevin Huerter constantly messes up because he's hesitant to shoot the ball. And Keegan also messes it up sometimes. But what he did, it was just quick fake to the corner and splash a 3. Go straight into the 3. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. He's like, I am shooting this ball. And yesterday, I watched the highlights from his crazy game against Utah. And he did this exact same play. And so it's just kind of cool to see him, the quick fake to the corner and then pull the 3. And so just watching that game against Utah, it's like, Keegan might be back because he just pulled the exact same play that he did against Utah. He went 5 for 8 from 3, was just shooting with such confidence, even at the start of the game, pulling these contested wing 3s and knocking them down. He very much might be back. Offensively, also went 2 for 4 inside the 3-point arc. Then you had DeMar getting into it in the post against Peyton Pritchard because the Kings pushed the pace, got the mismatch. And then a great sequence. Monk layup with a great Sabonis seal. Sabonis is always good at noticing when someone's driving in, and he always seals off his man. Monk running Kristaps Porzingis off the 3-point line because Sabonis was in the paint. Porzingis pops out for 3. The exact play that Kevin Huerter was late on to contest. Monk runs him off the 3-point line. Porzingis drives straight into Sabonis, who has a great contest inside, forces a tough shot. KP misses it. Kings rebound. It was just so nice to see the exact same play that we messed up earlier and get it completely right in the fourth quarter. And then Monk with an incredible behind the head, over the head pass to Keegan for 3, and the Kings go up 14. I still didn't feel comfortable, still too early, but then you just had DeMar hitting a 3, and DeMar just took over, not even from his scoring, but just being able to slow the game down and not turn the ball over. Because, there were some mistakes from the Kings. Devin Carter fouled Jaylen Brown, and Devin Carter got exploited a little bit. They were willing to let him go one-on-one offensively. They were exploiting his size a little bit, so he went back with Trey Lyles. I was surprised for how long they went with Devin Carter there, but he played well. And the Kings offensively, like they weren't super efficient. They knocked down their threes early in the fourth quarter, and then they just started killing clock. Keegan had a nice offensive rebound, thought he could have gone back up with it, and he pulls it out, and it results in, I think, a shot clock violation. I think maybe that was the play where Devin Carter got pulled. So I was like, yeah, Keegan could have gone up with it. Should he have? Maybe. That's just, one of his weaknesses, but also we're killing time, so I still would have liked him to go up with it, but you can't be too mad at killing time. Plus, he comes down in the defensive end and gets a great steal on Tatum. So that was really the big thing for the Kings. Kill time on one end and get stops on the other, and they were doing that. They relied on defense. They relied on just some Boston misses. Derek White had a big miss, and that Derek White miss kind of felt like the end of the game. Because offensively, they relied on DeMar making some shots. They relied on Monk making some shots. And they didn't make that many shots, but Derek White misses that three. Monk comes down, pick and roll with Sabonis, finds Sabonis inside for the slam, and they go up 14 with 2 minutes left. Timeout Boston, they empty the bench. And, I was still like slightly worried because you're bringing Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser in, and Sam Hauser immediately hits a three. So I'm like, okay, these guys can come in and just start knocking down threes. But you have DeMar DeRozan working the shot clock down like below 3 seconds and then drawing a foul. That's like the perfect offense late in the game. And he also hit another three. Keegan hit another three for good measure. And somehow the Kings go into Boston and beat the Celtics. The Celtics, not the same home team that they have been in the past. They're now 13-7 at home. So a little bit like the juggernaut version of the Kings, not so good at home, but still such a good win. Looking at some crazy stat lines, Sabonis in 39 minutes, 23 points, 28 rebounds. He had 8 points and 9 rebounds in the first quarter alone, and that's with him absolutely smoking a layup. So if he gets that layup, then he's just one rebound away from the first quarter double-double, which I really wanted to see. But him knocking down threes, dominating the glass, and doing exactly what he needed to do in this game, buying the Kings extra possessions that they definitely needed because it wasn't the most efficient game. Offensively, they also couldn't get to the free throw line. Him shooting 0 free throws is just really a bad look on the refs. That was ridiculous. But pushing the pace, being a big part of that, he has to be an all-star. Now that the Kings aren't a terrible team, he's just got to be an all-star lock. He probably should be anyways, even if the Kings were below 500 a couple games, but he's been crazy good. DeMar, like I said, 9 for 26. It wasn't looking good for him, but he always comes through in the fourth quarter. You have to wait before you judge him until the final buzzer has sounded, because obviously against Miami, like, he was okay in the fourth quarter, but just okay, non-existent in the first overtime. And then in the second overtime, it's like, okay, finally he's here. It's just like you have to buy time for him because eventually he's going to start knocking him down, especially when he has 26 shots to do it. And with Fox out, he's going to be the guy taking the shots. And then the 9 assists, 0 turnovers. He did a great job of playmaking out of the post. When the Celtics would send numbers at him, he made the right passes. Monk, for a long while, was looking like he was having a much better game than DeRozan until the fourth quarter, but he ended up going 9 for 24, 3 for 11 from 3. Definitely cooled a bit in the fourth quarter, and really in the second half, but that's where DeMar did step in, but he was great in the first half. Really good working the pick and roll with Sabonis and got some very important baskets there because the Kings needed to find a way to score inside at some points. Without Fox, that's a lot of points in the paint that you're missing. And so those pick and rolls, especially late to kind of put the game away, were really important. 22 points, 8 assists, had a steal, had a block. I talked about his great defense. And then Keegan, 7 for 12 from 3. And finally, the 3-point shooting game that I've been waiting for. 5 for 8 from 3. For 19 points, add in 3 blocks, 2 steals. Great defensive game from him. He's always been a slow starter in his short career, But this season, I think, has been the longest that he's taken to kind of get into this form. But hopefully he can maintain this now. Because we need him too. And that's a big reason that we've gone on this winning streak. There are a ton of reasons we're on this winning streak, but him shooting better is a pretty big one. Because early in this season, when we were losing, and I was just like, we just need some 3-point shots to go down. Then we went through a really weird patch where it didn't even look like 3-point shooting was going to save us, and it wasn't saving us. But now we're kind of back to that point we were at the beginning of the season, where it's just like we need some 3-point shooting, and we're finally getting it from an important player in Keegan Murray. And then Keon Ellis, 23 minutes, and he probably only had 23 minutes. I mean, one, because you want the size of Trey Lyles out there, but then two, because Devin Carter was just so surprisingly good in the fourth quarter. I'm sure Keon was supposed to come back in this game, but didn't because they just kept running with Carter. And then when they wanted to sub Carter, it was Trey Lyles for the size because Keon was being exploited. That's not his fault. But, a 1-for-5 game from 3. Had 3 steals, of course, and a block, because somehow he just always does. And he just filled up the stat sheet again, 6 points, 2 assists, 3 rebounds. So it wasn't the matchup for him, but he still found a way to make an impact. And then the bench, Trey Lyles, 28 minutes, 7 points on 2-for-5 from the field. 11 rebounds, a steal, a block. Everyone just chipping in with a steal and a block. And that's so important to the team defense, and his hustle was so important. Kevin Huerter, 19 minutes, and was just really bad outside of a couple of steals, the ones that he didn't immediately throw to the other team. Had one nice drive, Good drive against Al Horford. Other than that, just a bad game. And kind of sadly what we've come to expect. And just imagine replacing those 19 minutes with just a playable wing defender that can knock down some threes. Like, that would make such a big difference. And then the Rook, 17 minutes, 4 for 8 from the field, 3 for 5. The fourth quarter takeover was special. One of his rebounds was incredible. Just him skying for what I thought was going to be an offensive rebound for the Celtics. And he just skied up and said, no, I'll be taking that 11 points and playing some closing minutes. And the Kings now are tied for 9th with the Warriors in the West. It's really wild how these things have turned around. And obviously we don't want to be the 9 or the 10 seed, but just looking at it from a making the postseason standpoint, the Suns kind of in free fall. And so if they don't get it together, then it's an 11-team race. If the Spurs kind of fall out of it, like one might kind of expect them to later in the season as a bit of an inexperienced team. Maybe I shouldn't expect that because they do have Wemby and Chris Paul has been great, but the Kings could be in a good spot to not be worried about the 10 seed at least. And hopefully we don't even have to worry about that at all because we just keep going here. But it's definitely looking a bit easier than it was early in the season. And the next 2 games on this road trip to finish it out, Chicago and Milwaukee. And so from my point of view, it was always try to go 2-1. I thought Fox would be back for this Celtics game, but it seems to be, a little worse than we expected or than I expected. And so I really don't know what to expect from this Bulls game. But the Bulls aren't a team that you can take lightly because Zach LaVine has been playing very, very well. And then Big Vooch. Vooch has had a massive bounce back season. His efficiency is so much better. He went from shooting 29.4% from 3 on 4.1 attempts per game to 42.4 on 4.8 attempts per game, averaging over 20 points per game, averaging over 10 rebounds per game. This is not the same Vooch as last season where we're just watching him chuck threes and laughing at him. You got to get out to him. The Kings might go with a similar strategy that they did against KP. Obviously not the same shooter as KP is, but having the center, whether that's Domas or Lyles, stay in the paint, be in the drop, even against pick and pops to take away the rim, and then you have your player on the wing rotate over, try to get a contest off, and then rotate from there. I thought that was a strategy that worked well when executed correctly. And so the thing is, guys got to be on top of their game to be able to execute that. I don't know what the matchup's going to be, but maybe Keon on LaVine, but the size could definitely be a problem, like size and strength. I got faith in Keon, but we've seen it multiple times where the Kings will have Keon and then it doesn't go exactly how you want. So you throw Keegan, and that's just what's nice about having both of them. So I could see both of them getting time on Levine. And I think they start Keegan on Levine because then you can go with Keon on Kobe White. That's pretty much it. Oh yeah, one more thing. I expect Jalen Smith to go like 4 for 5 from 3 in this game. That's just, it feels like it happens every time. So I expect that to happen. Or maybe Chris Duarte will get some minutes and kill us. I don't know. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. Shout out as always to the members of this channel for the support. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.